So I recently finished Fire Emblem Fates, and honestly I thought it was pretty good. Fire Emblem Fates is a game that seems to be pretty disliked in the FE community. Most people play the series for a while seem to despise the game for a variety of reasons. Now I just finished streaming way through this game, but it was also my first Fire Emblem game. Because of this, I feel that a full review to give my thoughts could be interesting. Also, I just want another opportunity to talk about the game, because there's a lot to debunk. Without further ado, Fates full review. Oh, also according to my funny graph, only a small percent of people that actually watch the videos subscribe, so let's try to fix that. Okay, yeah, bye. Fire Emblem Fates, also known as Fire Emblem If in Japan, what a title, is a dating sim strategy RPG. As the 15th entry in the FE series, in it you play as Corn, the princess of two kingdoms on the verge of a colossal war with each other. Corn could also be a prince, but don't. Anyways, after some sparks fly between the two sides, you're forced to fight on one of the two sides, or alternatively you refuse to fight. Usually has its own 30+ hour game, but for my playthrough I went with Conquest, in which you side with your adopted family who raised you your whole life, so I'm going to be focusing on that one. The best way to go through this game is the sections, so here's how everything will be divided, and there will be some timestamps for each section. Oh yeah, a couple other things. Firstly, this entire video is big ol' spoilers for Conquest, so if you haven't played the game and intend to, don't watch this yet. And more importantly, when I played through the game, I had a mod installed. It's a really simple mod that allows Corn to marry anyone regardless of gender. It doesn't change gameplay at all, it just letting me marry a girl without using him. The story of Fates is a bit on the simple side, but that's not really a bad thing. After starting with Nor, Corn has to help her evil father, Garon, do a whole bunch of evil stuff for a while also recruiting more characters into her party of good. She eventually learns that Garon is not who he seems, but the only way to make everyone see this is by winning the war against Hoshido. She then takes the party into the Hoshidan capital, and takes together the royal flame to get Garon to conquer the place. Corn and his squad then eliminate Garon, Corn kinda dies or something, and they kill Takumi after he turns into a killing machine. Obviously there's more to the plot than that, but that's just a brief story that covers pretty much everything important. And while it isn't the most complex plot ever, I like it. So this is a great foundation for some character interactions, especially between the two sides, and a lot of the locations you travel to on your way to Hoshido are interesting. However, the story isn't the main focus of the game, so I won't be spending too much time on it. But before I switch topics, there is something pretty interesting about choosing to side with Nor. They're the ones who started the war, they're the ones ruled by a super evil dude, and they're the ones who do all the backstabbing. Yeah, if you choose Conquest, you're siding with the bad guys. You are the villain. Now, due to Corn's hard-set moral compass, you'll still work for good, but you end up doing awful things to achieve that, which is really interesting. Being presented with a choice like that is really nice, and definitely spices up the story a bit more. Now, what is a good story without characters? This is one thing fans of the series don't like about the game, and I can understand the point. There are a lot of really bland characters, and just some pretty awful ones in there too. Now, if only there was some comprehensive ranking system with handy pictures and a clear way to see everything in ranking. Oh wait, here's a tier list I made. Well, let's go from bottom up, shall we? There's only one person in E tier, and I never met in the game. So, you may be thinking, well, who is this lovely lady, and why are they in E tier if you don't know him? Well, that's Forrest, Leo's son. Yeah, he's a femboy. Automatic E tier. Moving into the actual tiers, F is for genuinely awful characters. I'll be selecting a couple of characters on the tier list to go over. And for this one, the most notable ones are Garon and Perry. Garon is the main antagonist of the game, yet his entire personality, motivations, and character can all be summed up in just one word: evil. He is literally nothing else. He seems like he could be a really interesting villain with his relationship with the royals, especially Corn, but they never do anything with him. He's just evil. Whoopee. Perry is a whole nother greater problem. She has a personality, it's just a terrible one. She is a grade A psychopath. Every conversation you have with her will inevitably end up with her talking about how she wants to kill someone, which could be interesting. But the problem is that she's presented as a comic relief, which functions as a huge juxtaposition to what she's really like. Perry's basically like if they took Joker, but rather than making it a character study drama, it was a comedy. She simply doesn't work and is really unpleasant and uncomfortable to talk to. C tier is where the main problems lie. I feel that FE represents most of the problems people have with the characters in this game. If I were to describe FE and quite a few other characters in this game with one adjective, it would be one note. FE has approximately one thing your character ever does, or talks about. In this case, it's protecting Elise. All of her supports, C, B, A, and even S, have her talking about is protecting Elise in some way, shape, or form. This makes her extremely boring to talk to, since you know how every conversation with her is going to go. She's not the only one to suffer from this. A lot of characters in C and B tier are kind of one note, but FE is the best example. And on top of one note characters, there are a lot of tropey characters. These aren't as annoying, but they are pretty noticeable, especially if you play multiple Fire Emblem games. Just like these fantastic original characters. retired general, womanizer, shy, edgy. Horn. B tier is basically C tier, but with characters that are more fun to talk to, with a bit more personality or just more enjoyable tropes, with one exception we'll get to later. A tier is where we get to the good characters. Everyone from this point forward is a fleshed out character with quality interactions and supports. The best example to represent this tier category is Silas. Silas is one of the first characters you encounter after choosing Conquest, and from the moment he comes on screen, he's interesting. He's a close childhood friend of Corrin's, except she can't remember who he is because they've been away for so long, yet he remembers all of the good times they had together. All of the cutscenes they have together are wonderful. It features the two of them trying to figure out why none of Corrin's family members have mentioned Silas ever, while Silas recalls all of the things they used to do together, and all the sights she wanted to see. It's really sweet to see them bonding over their past memories, and made me excited anytime we got a support between them. And aside from Corrin, Silas is just a pretty great character. He clearly takes his work seriously, but also has a great upbeat attitude, which makes even simple banter with him enjoyable. Finally, we get to S tier. Only 6 characters had the honor of being put in this tier, but there's a darn good reason for that. These are the characters that will always be a joy to have on screen, no matter what they're talking about, because they make everything interesting. With one exception, but again, we'll get to that later. I want to talk about everyone here briefly, so here we go. Leo is Corrin's adoptive younger brother, who is basically the brains of the royals. He's got some sass to him and has an atmosphere of not taking things too seriously, which makes most of the conversations with him interesting and funny. However, he does know when to take things deathly seriously, and whenever he does, you know something's about to go down. Takumi definitely has the most presence in Birthright. Since Conquest he acts as one of the secondary antagonists. He starts off being the most racist person on the planet. From the moment you meet him, he's insulting Corrin for Norin, which doubles down when you choose to fight for Nor. After that, anytime you encounter him, he's still being racist, sometimes to a comedically over the top degree. Until he isn't. At some point he starts to insult you less and less, and starts to complain more and more about how much he hurts, and slowly starts to lose his marbles. It all pays off at the very end of the game, where Takumi's hatred for Corrin has basically split his soul in two. One half is pure wrath towards Corrin and Nor, which ended up taking over his body, while the other half got shoved out as all the good things his siblings knew him for. Corrin ends up being the second half in the kind of afterlife, where he finally accepts Corrin and what she's trying to do. It helps defeat the evil Takumi. It's a very interesting transformation, and is a fantastic way to end his arc. On the other side of things, you've got Elise, Corrin's adopted little sister. Elise is a bundle of energy who always has something cute to say. She's super energetic, which is a fun contrast to Hoshine's little sister, who's a typical shy girl. Elise always just illuminates any dialogue she's in. I love her. My only problem with Elise is that her voice is super high, which in and of itself isn't a problem, but I nearly destroyed my vocal cords when dubbing over her lines. I'm glad to see you're okay, Corrin. You must have the devil's own luck, huh? Yay, we got our sister back! I still had a lot of fun doing it though. Corrin needs her own segment. We'll get back to her. Arthur is absolutely hilarious. I love everything about him. He thinks he's some big shot hero and tries everything he can to help heal. He's the most confident man on the planet. He can make ordering a burger sound like some great heroic feat. He's also really unlucky, which is a nice break of comedy whenever it's brought up. Arthur's the only comic relief character in S tier, but he's the only one who made me excited anytime he was on screen. I seriously like him so much that I decided to get him to S tier with Effie, despite the fact that he's quite possibly the worst scene in the game, just so we can get a happy ending, and I don't regret it at all. And then we get to Camilla. She is pretty cool. So that was a lot going over characters, but it was all leading up to 2 big points to have about them. First of all, the characters are actually pretty dang good in this game. Sure, there are a couple of stingers, but the good outweighs the bad here. And secondly, and probably more important point, there are way too many goddamn characters in this game. Like, geez, talk about a bloated cast. Let's look at some other Fire Emblem games in comparison, shall we? Echoes has 34 total characters. Sacred Stones has 34 as well. Three Houses has 35, but you can't use them all in one playthrough. How many does Fates have in comparison? God damn, 70. Now, granted, you can't recruit them all in one Conquest one. Instead, you only have 41 units to keep track of. Now, you still meet a bunch of the other characters, so you still gotta remember them, so it's not much better. Anyways, this many characters is pretty troublesome. The problem is, since you can't bring 41 units into battle, you're gonna have to keep some people out of battles that you do. And if you want to use them for the next battle, they'll probably be under-leveled, which means you'll end up sticking with one squad and a small handful of people who you'll switch out depending on who you're fighting. And then that means you'll build support with those characters, so they'll be even better with each other, as well as being able to get to know them better, meaning you'll want to use them even more. All of this just results in the characters that got put on the sidelines once just never getting a chance in the spotlight. There's so many characters in Conquest I just wanted to know more about, but I never got a good opportunity to do so because of this. But the bigger problem here is that the devs worked themselves in a corner. With so many characters, there was no way they could have made them all interesting, hence why there are so many boring characters. In an ideal world, you have the royal family, all of the returners, and then a small handful of other important characters like Silas or Kays. But there are just so many characters who simply do not contribute anything to the story, or just really don't need to be in the game. It's such a shame it ended up like this. But hey, at least Conquest only had 41 to 70. Birthright got 2 extras, and poor Revelations got all 70 of them. Just imagine trying to build bonds with everyone there, it'd be impossible. But even the best of characters are awful with bad writing. The writing in Fates is probably the biggest complaint I see with the game, and yeah, I can definitely understand where people are coming from with this one. A large majority of the time the writing is pretty good, but when it's bad, oh, is it bad. The best single example of this happens in Chapter 14, when we're on some boats. Corrin and the squad are going to see a musical performance, and Garner is watching with them. So a singer with long blue hair comes on stage and sings a banger remix of Lost in Thoughts. And Garner starts to have a stroke or something because it slaps so hard. I don't know. Anyways, it's considered an attempted assassination, and the serious singer gets away, leaving everyone wondering who she is. Then Corrin goes up to Azura, her long blue-haired friend, known for singing Lost in Thoughts All Alone, and is like, hello Azura, my long blue-haired friend who is known for singing Lost in Thoughts All Alone. Have you seen any mysterious singers around with long blue hair singing Lost in Thoughts All Alone? And Azura's like, no, of course not. And Corrin believes this. Why? It's so monumentally stupid. The only thing she was even attempting to do to hide her identity was wear a veil, and it's see-through anyway, so she wasn't doing anything. Except it must have been magically infused with something, since everyone believes Azura. It's such a mind-bogglingly stupid moment in the game, and it could be a major turnoff for most people. But we are done with Azura in this section. Oh no. So before we move on to the main problem with writing, we need to talk about the star of the show, Corrin. I know a lot of people can't stand her, but I can't really see why. She's fantastic. She wants nothing more than world peace and knows what she needs to do to achieve that. She understands all the consequences of her actions and makes sure that they'll harm as few people as possible. She's known to be kind to everyone who supports, and it's just really nice to have around. She's lived in a castle her whole life, so it's interesting to see how she deals with things in the outside world, especially the death of her mother in Chapter 5, which is one of my favorite chapters. She's just so sweet. Yeah, that's the right word for Corrin. Is she perfectly written? No. Like, for some reason she's introduced with amnesia or something, but then it's ironically immediately forgotten about. Why was it there in the first place? Beats me. Also, just the way she's set up is a tad uncreative. She's a young girl with magic powers, who was stolen away from a real family when she was an infant and raised in another family with an evil parent. She is kept in a castle, sheltered from the rest of the world, and is never told about her true family or her powers. Does sound a bit familiar? Anyways, Corrin's not perfect, but I still adore her. And while she can be a tad naive at times, she's a greatly enjoyable character that I don't understand all the hate for. So, Azura's a pretty alright character on her own, and Corrin's a fantastic character on her own. But for some reason, anytime these two have a conversation together, it becomes the most irritating conversation ever. They seem to magically lose all of their character when they speak to each other, and 90% of the conversations are just exposition or saying stuff we already saw. And during the second half of the game, they seem to have these fun chats before every goddamn chapter. I've actually just stopped paying attention to all these because they're just so boring. They fail to capture my attention at all. I really don't know why it's like this, but it's so annoying because on their own the characters are pretty good. Another good example of good and bad writing is the death scenes in the game. There are two I want to talk about in the game, and there's a weird difference between them. The first one happens right before you get to the Ocean capital, and Lilith sacrifices herself to save you. Now, if you don't know who Lilith is, I don't blame you. She's an astral dragon who poses as a maid for the first couple chapters of the game, and then shows you the astral plane. After that, yeah, you never have to talk to her again. So when she comes out of nowhere to save you, it's more of a reminder that she exists more than an emotional scene. The worst part is, Lilith isn't even a party member or anything. She can't help you in battle, you can't build support with her, and as far as I know, I saw all there was to her, which is practically nothing. It's like the single worst pick for someone to sacrifice to aid Corrin, yet it's who they went with. I felt no emotions during the death scene because I just did not care. The other death scene, however, is much more impactful. Really close to the end of the game, you have a face-off with the Crown Prince of Oshido, Ryoma. Now, Ryoma is your step relative and felt immensely betrayed when Corrin sided with Nor. And every time you encounter him in battle, he talks about how you are now his enemy, not his sister. So once you defeat him, ultimately winning the war, Corrin and Ryoma have a heart-to-heart. She tells him that she wants to end the war, not win it, with as few casualties as possible, and she promised to keep him safe. However, Garn wants to see Corrin personally execute Ryoma, despite the fact that she had sworn never to take a life. Ryoma considers everything Corrin has said to him, and ultimately decides to take his own life, to prevent her from getting her hands dirty. Now this scene gets you right in the feels. It's deeper than Ryo just saving himself the embarrassment of being killed by Norton. It's him accepting Corrin as his sister and doing what he must do to help her fulfill her wishes and ultimately end the war. It's a fantastic scene, and I wish there were more like it in the games. Anyways, I've talked long enough about the writing. Now, it's time to move on to... Fates is mostly just some good old Fire Emblem gameplay. You throw units at other units and eventually some of them die. I mean, there's a lot more strategy to it than that, but whatever. You gotta take the weapon triangle into account, and hard counters like flying units dying if they touch an arrow, and then supports will buff units next to each other, and much more. But there's one big change Fates makes to the typical formula that really changed the way battles play out: the duel system. The duel system, contrary to its name, allows you to bring 2 units into one interaction, and it really changes the way you think about battles. It was introduced in Awakening, but I'm just looking at it here since I haven't played Awakening. Anyways, the duel system can make an unwinnable fight winnable with just a bit of strategy. You can get 2 of your most damaging units to attack with each other, easily taking out a powerful foe. You get some help from another teammate with a weapon advantage to remove a threatening foe with ease. Or you could get a really weak unit to attack with someone more powerful to give them a second attack, and to give the weak unit a lot of experience. There's a lot you can get out of this mechanic, and it really adds another layer of strategy to the strategy game. But there's another layer to the system. You see, there's a little feature you can use called Pair Up. Pairing up units effectively lets 2 of them take up the same space on the map, with the one in the back being untouchable and unable to act, while the leading unit will get a massive buff from the backing unit. There's a lot more to it, like being able to cancel dual attacks and building up to be able to nullify an attack, and I honestly just don't understand it. I didn't use the mechanic much, that's because there's just so much I did not understand. The best use I found for was building supports, because it is completely unmatched in its potential to do so, especially between a weak and powerful unit. The map design in Conquest is also pretty solid. The enemy units are well placed, and it makes for a lot of great puzzle solving. Since there is almost always way out of any situation, you just have to look hard enough and think outside the box. The game is also pretty dang hard. There were many maps where I had to restart multiple times, and most of the difficulty came from the fact that I played really poorly at the start, which ended up having horrible consequences at the end of the game. But I've heard others say the game's just hard. Some of the maps have a unique little thing called Dragon Bane, which is a space that royals can stand on and activate to manipulate the terrain or some units in some ways. Most of the uses it gets are brilliant and add yet another layer of strategy to the gameplay, especially if you have to use one of your best units to activate them. Overall, the gameplay of Fates is really deep and requires you to approach situations for a variety of different situations to beat. Outside battles, there is a bit more to the game. In between the strategy parts of the game, you get to explore your castle, which functions kind of like a hub world. It's where you can gather your bearings before setting off to battle and purchase weapons, build supports, and do a whole bunch of other things with the building mechanics. After every battle, you get a point you can invest into making a new building or upgrading an already existing building. There are a colossal amount of these, so I'm just going to go over all the important ones and how they affect things. Staff Shop and Armory. Pretty simple but essential. These buildings is where you purchase all of your important weapons and items you'll be using, including Master Seals, so yeah, pretty dang important. Lottery Shop. Everyone's favorite game mechanic comes back again. Gambling. Well, you don't actually bet on anything, but most of the time you don't win anything either. Until you upgrade to level 2 or 3, then it'll give you some nice rewards almost every time. Arena. Now here's the actual gambling spot. You send in a random unit or 2 to fight it against an equal amount of enemies, and you win what you bet. Pray your powerful units show up and you'll be good to go. Accessory Shop. Oh god, this place. Here you purchase a bunch of fun accessories for your characters to wear in battle. Most of them have no effect in the main story battles, and some of the required materials you don't have access to. But some of the accessories look really nice, and others don't. I only got 2 in my playthrough. A shield for Laszlo that looked perfect on him, and this stupid massive shell that looked absolutely awful on everyone. I eventually gave it to Betty since he's the only one who managed to pull it off. There are also some items sold here that got removed from the world release of the games. Items like the sexy and love swimsuits. Hot Spring. On that topic, the Hot Spring is a building that exists to show off the character design. Its main purpose is to follow people of the same gender as Corrin, so you can more easily build non-romantic supports. However, since I have the nifty little mod installed, it essentially just gave me free supports with all the girls, and I was definitely gonna add support one from the start. However, I am almost certain there's some sort of mechanic there that makes people Corrin doesn't have support visit more often, because the most frequent visitors were my least favorite characters, or so I just never talked to. It was rare to go there and not see Baruka, Effie, Perry, or Serena. And on the flip side, out of the dozens of times I went there, Camilla showed her face once. Private Quarters. Alright, this building is just so bizarre. So ignoring the fact that Corrin lives in a treehouse, in your private quarters you can invite allies over to awkwardly stare at you for a couple of seconds. Then they say a voice line and leave you be. Why is this here? I don't know, your guess is as good as mine. Most of these are just weird to watch, but some are pretty dang funny.
This was fun. Okay, bye.
But things only get weirder once you get married. Once you get sports open, they live in your private quarters, obviously. But a new option will show up there. Bond. This is the single strangest addition to a game I think I have ever seen. So, what does bonding do? Well, your spouse will say something to you, then some hearts will float down from the bottom screen, and your spouse will say something about kissing you and do just that. Why is this here? I don't know. What effect does it have in battles? Not a clue. Does it get worse? Absolutely. If you happen to be unlucky enough to stumble upon your special someone sleeping, you'll be put into a mini game where you're told to, and I quote, wake up that slug a bit. You then have to use the touchscreen to wake them up. Yeah, this game is pretty weird sometimes. Finally, I want to go over the graphics and sounds of the game. This should be a relatively short section. Most of the time you see the characters will be in these portraits. They're fun and the characters have various facial expressions to show how they react to things that are going, which can be especially useful in battle when they show how they'll fight against someone. Speaking of, in battle, the characters are represented by these GBA style sprites. They're a key way to show what's happening without cluttering up the screen, and they all look fantastic. And then when in a cutscene or fighting someone, it switches to a full model. These models are not the best. Like, obviously they look a bit chunky, but that's because I massively upscaled them when they were meant to be viewed on a tiny 3DS screen. But ignoring that, some of the proportions are just wacky. So the characters have heads that look way bigger than they should be, which makes several characters look like bobbleheads. It's pretty weird looking, but it's easy enough to ignore. Aside from that, the environments look nice, the backgrounds are pretty, and all the UI and whatnot is nice. Audio-wise, the game is great. The sound design is solid, with each hit sounding like it does some damage, each block sounding like it should, and all sorts of other fun sound effects. The one problem I have with it is the critical hit sound, or rather the lack thereof. I think the crit sound in this game is just a slightly amplified version of the normal hit sound, which is just so disappointing. I love the power of a crit sound, and even the older Fire Emblem games have one, so it's a shame there's no super satisfying sound to go with the super powerful hit. And then we get to the soundtrack, and oh boy is it a good one. Each track here fits the mood of what it's going for perfectly. From the relaxed feel of the astral plane, to the strategic intense mood of battle, to the calming and upbeat vibe of support. And then to a track that I'm all too familiar with, the doomful feel of a unit who's about to die. But it is impossible to mention the soundtrack of this game without bringing up the main theme of the game, Lost in Thoughts All Alone. This song is the sole reason I wish Nintendo would put their soundtracks on Spotify. I really don't think it can express just how much I adore this song. The lyrics, the instruments, the melody, all of it is just beautiful. And the final battle theme with the orchestrated remix of it, it's wow. So, all in all, what do you think of Fire Emblem Fates Conquest? Well, I greatly enjoy the game, but it's not without its flaws. The characters and gameplay are solid, but the writing and some of the mechanics can hinder the experience a bit. However, the good definitely outweighs the bad here, and I strongly recommend this game for anyone who enjoys strategy RPGs. It's a real fun one. I also happen to have a couple of giant tier lists I can put it on, and a go over and high B tier on both of them. Anyways, that'll do it for this video, so until next time, friends.